Welcome into I guess I almost just did the old intro, Rocky, but welcome into the debut episode of the Foolish Club Media Postgame Show. I am Steven Serda, joined as always for the first of I don't know, roughly 20 something, hopefully, NFL games covering the Kansas City Chiefs. I am joined by my guy, Rocky Magaña. After the Kansas City Chiefs' first preseason action of the 2024 season, unfortunately, it was a 26-13 loss to the Jacksonville Jaguars, but still plenty of exciting things to dive into in our first action of the back-to-back Super Bowl champions. Rocky, first time here on Foolish Club Media, first time at our new home, but same old post-game show. I'm very excited for the three-peat season, Rock. What's going on?
Hey, man, new scene, same stream, baby. And I'm ready to overreact to every single thing that happened tonight. Like it's a regular season. Get I'm joking. It's just a preseason. But Steve, buddy, it's back to be on the it's good to be back on the airways with you. I mean, my heart just leaps for joy every single time I get a chance to do a post-game show with you. I mean, Chiefs football is back, which is the big thing.
Yes.
But we're back, which is also a big thing.
It's been a while, and thank you for everybody who has got on this journey with us over this summer as we got this thing off the ground. We're very excited for what we're going to bring you this NFL season as the Kansas City Chiefs look to make NFL history. We're hoping to make history here at Foolish Club Media with all of you. So please make sure you subscribe, rate, and review everything that we are doing. Head over to our YouTube page if you haven't checked that out yet. We got plenty of stuff up over there for you. We're going live every single weekday, Monday through Friday, with Ron Hughley. It's the Daily Fix. Got a few quick topics, not always Chiefs related, but plenty of sports conversations. We're having a lot of fun with doing that. So highly encourage you to head over to our YouTube page and subscribe there at Foolish Club Media as we continue to get this thing off the ground, continue to gear up for the 2024 regular season. But let's dive into some preseason action, Rocky. And as with any preseason contest in the NFL, there's a lot to read and lack of action. There's a lot to discuss and lack of playing time and lack of reps, especially with this Kansas City Chiefs team that is somehow one of the youngest rosters in the NFL that is still loaded with all kinds of potential and still looks like they are one of the better rosters in the NFL, top to bottom. Like they don't have any absolutely glaring holes, but in their preseason debut tonight against the Jacksonville Jaguars, there was a few things that we've been talking about all offseason and things that we've been pointing to as like causes for concern. But at the end of the day, you're still the back-to-back champions. You still have Patrick Mahomes. You still have Andy Reid. And despite what the Chiefs head coach said this week when he's like, oh, the starters are going to play a full first quarter, we told you on Friday on Show and BK that was just simply not going to happen. Andy Reid does this every year. They play about one series every single year, and that's exactly what happened tonight in Jacksonville. Starters go out, look pretty solid on the opening drive, moving the football down the field. They get a field goal out of it. It stalls at the end. But overall, I think in one series for Patrick Mahomes in this offense, you saw enough to get a little bit juiced about the potential of this Kansas City Chiefs offense this season.
Oh, 100%. I mean, the lone bright point of the offense, I mean, for the most part in this game was the first string offense, on that opening drive. Obviously we'll talk a little bit about injuries. Sucks that Hollywood Brown went down early. But I mean, just the fact that the Chiefs played their starters in the first preseason game is impressive. I mean, let's talk about it. Like Caleb Williams sat the entire first preseason game. CJ Stroud sat the entire first preseason game. Like you go down the line, Russell Wilson didn't play in the first preseason game. All these teams are out there playing scared with their quarterbacks, afraid to put their guys on the field and treat them with kid gloves. Like there's some glass menagerie of things they want to keep on the shelf and not get hurt. And I understand it's not real football, but if you're playing scared, like your guys are going to get hurt, then your guys are going to get hurt. Like it's when you go out there and play scared that bad things happen. And the fact that Andy Reid's like, listen, we're football players. We play football. And yeah, I'm not going to put my guys out there unnecessarily, but I'm going to put them on the football field. The rest of the NFL should probably just pay some damn attention to what works since the guys won back-to-back Super Bowls, right? The rest of the NFL seems bound and determined to do the exact opposite of what Andy Reid does. Like, oh, that's just old school thought. That's old school football. It doesn't work anymore. Blah, 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 blah. Oh, McVay. Oh, I want to have the 49ers offense. Like, are you kidding me? Like, the old ball coach knows what he's doing. And so the fact that he played the starters for one drive, it was more than enough to look at it and say, yep, they're clicking, they're ready to go.
And we talked about it on Friday's episode of Show MBK. Ron Hughley, obviously, very vocally against the Chiefs playing any starters at all in the preseason. And I get that. There's lots of teams that just choose not to do that. You mentioned the Rams. Every year, there's a 0% chance that Sean McVay is going to play a single starter in the preseason. That's just the way they like to operate. But there is some value, especially with the Chiefs the last couple of years, in the turnover that they've had and the rebuilding that they've had to do each offseason where they're kind of piecing these different things together. Like, there's value in just getting reps where the guys on the other side of the football are trying to come take you out. And so I do think that there's value in those reps, as limited as they may be for the Kansas City Chiefs starters. And I mentioned to start things off, like, in the preseason, you read a lot into the lack of reps and the lack of on-field action. And I think there's a lot to be said about the Chiefs rookie left tackle, Kingsley Suamataia, and somebody that we've discussed all offseason, somebody that was a draft crush for a lot of Chiefs fans, and it worked out perfectly for them to be able to land him in the second round because it was their biggest position of need without question. And this is a guy that's got the tools to be a week one starter. Now, it was like, he's a raw player. He's going to take some time to develop. And they've got Wanye Morris, who gave you some serviceable snaps last season. So we have to see how that plays out. And then tonight, with the Chiefs inactives, Chris Jones does not play. Nick Bolton, Kadarius Toney, Joe Thuney, Wanye Morris, Derek Nottie, Najee Johnson, Kelvin Joseph, and Justin Reed, all out for the Kansas City Chiefs tonight. So Wanye not being there tonight maybe affected some of this a little bit. But I'm going to go ahead and jump to conclusions here, Rocky, and say that Kingsley Suamataia is clearly the Chiefs' week one starting left tackle. And I think it goes without question now, because we already saw the trend shift as soon as the pads came on in training camp this year. Like, early on, it was him and Wanye really swapping, and then we really saw Kingsley just kind of take this thing over, and he hasn't looked back. And then tonight, he gets one drive with the starters, and then it's out, and Wanye's not even playing tonight. But to me, that further highlights, like, the Chiefs believe in him and his potential is their starting left tackle, and hopefully their starting left tackle of the future and long-term, because we know how valuable it is to have a rookie player who is a day one starter for you on that kind of contract at that position. Like, I think Chiefs fans should be really excited. And the fact that he just didn't even play that much tonight, because the Chiefs are already giving him a vote of confidence and saying, we don't need to see that much more from you right now.
Oh, 100%. If the Chiefs were concerned about his development, which I'll admit, when we drafted him, I thought he was a very raw player. I didn't think he'd be ready this soon. But if the Chiefs were concerned about his development at this point, he would have played more than one series. But the fact of the matter is that the Chiefs feel like he's ready to slot in at the left tackle. I agree with you. I think that that if you read the tea leaves on this, that Andy Reid wanted him to win the job all along. They were giving him every opportunity to go out there and win. And it seems like he's like seized the day and gone out there and done enough to make them feel confident in him, which is good, because aside from him at the tackle position today, there was a lot of really concerning football play, especially out of a former starter named Lucas Niang, which, how does he have skinnier legs than Bull? Like, the man literally looks like he's standing on two broomsticks. Like, he has never seen a leg day that he wanted to participate in, is what it looks like. And he was getting pushed all over the place. He was slow off the snap. He was starting so deep in his set with his leg kicked all the way back, just signaling that he was going to be in pass protection before the snap, which I know Mitchell Schwartz says isn't a big deal, but he wasn't even like getting back in pass protection when he was doing that. That was the issue. And so I think that the Chiefs needed Kingsley to come out and show out a bit and show them enough that they felt comfortable to take him out, because the rest of the depth of the tackle position, and honestly, even at the guard position, wasn't great today. I think you saw that Hunter Nuzard and CJ Hansen are both rookies out of them. I think you saw that Caliendo is Caliendo. He's not the next coming of Nick Allegretti, no matter how much we want him to be. And so I think that on the whole, the biggest bright spot on the line today by far was the fact that, yes, you do look like you have you look like Kingsley's going to be the starting left tackle. Yeah. Whether or not you have a starting left tackle remains to be seen.
And I totally agree with all that. And from our guy, JC Proctor, I know he's a big fan of Foolish Club Media. So be like JC and follow us and subscribe to everything that we're trying to do over here. But it's preseason, but man, the depth on both lines is very concerning. Like, I'm not going to overreact to preseason because we do this every year where, like, the Ravens had this undefeated streak in the preseason or whatever, and we overreact to guys who show out against third stringers or whatever in the third and fourth quarter of a preseason game. Like, there genuinely just is not that much to learn from these games, because the guys at the top of NFL rosters and the guys at the bottom of NFL rosters, there's just a dramatic difference in what those guys are capable of doing on the field. So I'm not going to read too much into that, but that is something that is a cause for concern a little bit going into this season. And it has to do with with something that we already mentioned, Rocky. And this is a very young Chiefs roster. Like, we talk about Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce and Chris Jones and these seasoned veterans, but they've done an incredible job of drafting and overhauling and filling out this roster over the last couple of years through the NFL draft. And Brett Veach has done a remarkable job of that. But the problem is, as you get older, as you continue to win championships, as you build a dynasty, like, inevitably you're going to have to sacrifice some veteran players here and there for younger guys and just roll the dice and hope that they pan out. And that's what happens. Like, that's just what happens across the NFL. As you get older, as you get more seasoned, you get more expensive, and you have to make some tough decisions. So I don't think it's a cause for concern for the Kansas City Chiefs, but I just think it's something that continues to further highlight something that we've discussed a lot this offseason. And they're young. Like, they just don't have the seasoned veteran depth that they have had in years past. So I think there is going to be some growing pains with all of that. So yeah, you could be a little bit concerned about how the backup offensive line looked, but overall, the Chiefs' starting offensive line, especially if Kingsley is everything that they're billing him to be, is like, that might be one of the best starting offensive lines in the NFL. The depth, super questionable. Yeah, you could feel like that is suspect. That's totally okay, but this is just going to be part of the process like we saw last season. And like, I'm so confident in the offensive line and the overall offense. Like, as long as they keep the guys healthy a majority of the season, there's no way this offense is going to be as bad as it was last season. So overall, I think you should feel glowing about the Kansas City Chiefs offense after their first preseason game.
Oh, I 100% agree with you. I would say with it, to the depth question, and with it just being preseason, yeah, don't overreact to preseason production. But if your guy's out there getting whooped by a third string, roster filler for the other team on a down by down basis, and it's a guy who's going to make your 53-man roster, then you got a concern there, right? Like, if you have nobody out there pushing Lucas Niang around, then that's a concern about Lucas Niang or Mike Caliendo. But that being said, you're also absolutely right. The more success you have, the higher profile your players get, and the bigger their contracts are to retain. And so by default, your roster becomes more top heavy. We especially saw that with the Tyreek Hill situation, where the Chiefs were just unwilling to make their roster that top heavy at that point. And they said, listen, we gotta let him go so that we can kind of recalibrate the roster for this next push in this window with Patrick Mahomes that we have to fight for championships, and it's worked out perfectly for them. They just won 2 back-to-back Super Bowls. But I think that it's something that it's a balancing act that Brett Veach is going to have to do throughout the entire tenure of Patrick Mahomes, not just because of his contract, but because of the success that the team's going to have. The other players around him he's going to make money for other guys on the team that wouldn't have happened if he wasn't the quarterback, right? Just because of the success they're going to have.
I would much rather be in the Chiefs situation and the way that they have chosen to build out their roster over the last couple of years than be in the situation that the San Francisco 49ers are in right now, where they're going to have to pay Brock Purdy at some point if he continues to prove like he is that caliber of starting NFL quarterback. And I think he's done enough through 2 seasons to probably earn that kind of massive payday that quarterbacks are getting nowadays. But what they're doing with Brandon Ayuk right now is a product of the 49ers don't have a lot of cap space because they are so top heavy and they are so loaded with talent at the top that we saw them sacrifice all over the place last season, and they're sacrificing again this year because paying Christian McCaffrey, paying Fred Warner, paying Deebo Samuel, paying Nick Bosa, paying all of these superstar players, George Kittle, it's going to wind up making you sacrifice at the bottom of the roster and along your depth. And the San Francisco 49ers offensive line outside of Trent Williams is garbage. And now they're having to make sacrifices and they can't get this thing figured out with Brandon Ayuk. That's a situation the Chiefs have been able to avoid despite the fact that they have Patrick Mahomes because of the way that they maneuver their cap and because of the way they have chosen to build this thing out. And I think that that's the smart way to do it. So I think that you take those sacrifices to make sure that you can keep your cornerstones in place and not dramatically sacrifice things here and there. And the Chiefs have done a good job of filling out those positions for the most part with veteran players. And we could still see them make a move somewhere along the way if they feel like they need to bring back a Donovan Smith along the offensive line. Or I want to get in the linebackers here in a little bit, but I feel like that's a position where they really could use a veteran player or something to just make you feel a little bit better about that room overall. But before we get into that, I do want to talk about Hollywood Brown. We mentioned him briefly already. Unfortunately, first play of the game, nice connection. Patrick Mahomes, Hollywood Brown, first down, already feeling it. Let's go. This explosive Chiefs offense is back, and Hollywood leaves with a shoulder injury after the first play of the game. Not what you want to see in the preseason. Also, people who advocate against playing the starters in the preseason, that's why. That's why you make those cases. But hopefully it's nothing serious. Hopefully it's nothing that's going to make him miss any time or anything like that. The Chiefs are always going to be super cautious with these guys. And, Hollywood is a player who is extremely talented and I think has been underrated for the most part of his NFL career. But part of the reason he's in Kansas City on a cost-effective one-year deal this season is because he's been banged up a lot over the last few years. So it's not what you want to see, especially when you got another small wide receiver in Xavier Worthy that you're expecting big things out of. And we'll see what happens with Rashee Rice and his legal troubles and all of that. But hopefully come Monday when the Chiefs are back on the practice field in St. Joseph, Missouri, we'll hear about Hollywood Brown, and hopefully it's nothing serious. And he just got a little bit banged up and the Chiefs took him out because it's preseason game number 1.
Yeah. I mean, I think you'll see how serious it is if you see the Chiefs make a move for bringing in another wide receiver. If with Hollywood Brown, if it's nothing, if there's no movement, then you're fine. But if you see them bring in some kind of a veteran back into the roster type of reclamation project, like a Juju Smith-Schuster or something like that, then that they have concerns about the longevity of this injury. But we hope it's nothing. We hope it's just it's just precautionary. That also being said, that is why people say you don't play your starters in the preseason, but it's also a next man up mentality. And I think in the long run, just getting the guys the reps and getting them out there, like if a guy's going to get injured, there's freak plays. But it's almost like you got to get those first hits and you to get the rust off. And the longer you put those first hits away, put off having those first hits, the longer it's going to take to get into regular season form. You see these other teams that don't play their starters, and I think they start slower sometimes. They look rustier because these guys haven't played. You can practice all you want, but it's not in game. It's not in game speed, right? So, but thoughts and prayers to Hollywood Brown, though. Hopefully he gets back on the field quick and it's nothing big.
Yeah. I really hope we get good news on Monday, but it also, it's a shoulder injury. And so, just depending on the severity of that, it could be just kind of a sprain and they're being precautionary, and hopefully that's all it is. And hopefully we see Hollywood Brown back sooner rather than later. But should hear from the Chiefs later on this week when they return to the practice field in St. Joe. So have all the updates for you at Foolish Club Media. So make sure you stay locked in right there. But I want to get into the running back room before we dive into that linebacker conversation, Rocky. And of course, we got to talk about Carson Steele. Carson Steele is the kind of football player that fans just fall in love with. Like he is the kind of guy that every football fan across the country, when you get a player like Carson Steele, everybody is literally rooting for that guy. Undrafted guy, just huge monster, like loves contact, just runs through tackles and tries to just bulldoze people. And he's kind of playing this fullback, running back hybrid role for the Chiefs. Andy Reid's talked about it. They haven't had a fullback the last couple of years, but we've always had fun when the Chiefs have had a fullback on the roster. And Carson Steele, I think he could totally play that fullback role for the Chiefs, but I think he's bringing a little bit more to the table than just being a fullback for the Chiefs. Like, I think he's got legitimate upside as a runner, and I still don't think that it's any sure thing who the guy behind Isaiah Pacheco is going to be heading into the season. I want to talk about Clyde and Deneric Prince and all of that stuff. But Carson Steele made an absolute statement tonight. And I think every Chiefs fan in Kansas City was when, Hollywood Brown goes down early in the game, you only get one series from the starters. I think the only thing in that game that you really stood up off your couch for was every single time that Carson Steele touched the football tonight.
Oh, 100%. And listen, I've been saying on Beach season all off season that Carson Steele is making this roster. Andy Reid wants a fullback. Last year was the first time since he's been with the Chiefs that he didn't carry a fullback on the roster. And low key, the Chiefs offense struggled in short yardage situations. Like Andy Reid wants a lead blocker in short yardage situations, and he wants a guy he can give a quick fullback handoff to, like right here. And yes, Carson Steele does bring more to the table than your average fullback because he's a running back by trade with a lot of power. He's a running back in a fullback's body. He was Mr. Football in Indiana in 2020. He had 31 rushing touchdowns as a senior in high school. He's had a pet alligator named Crocky J his entire life. Like, what is not to love about this man? Yeah, the thing is 4.5 feet long. His name is Crocky J, and he's had a pet alligator his entire life. Like, why wouldn't you love this man? Like, he is everything. Like we're talking about, like you want to talk about camp crushes. You want to talk about overreacting to preseason and preseason crushes. Like, Carson Steele is the man of steel that, like, I mean, look, there's a nickname, just boom, right off the top of my head, just comes the man of steel. He's right there. Like the nicknames come rolling off. The heart emojis are in your eyes when you're watching him play. I mean, look at that hair. Like, my God, like he looks like Captain America. He's gonna make the team. And Andy Reid loves a fullback. He loves a fullback, and he's on the roster. He's on the 53. Put it in ink. I'm telling you.
I can already see it. Like, Chiefs fans are going to just absolutely fall in love with him this preseason because he's the exact kind of player that when you touch the football, he's going to go hit somebody. Like, he's not trying to shake and bake. He's not trying to avoid tackles. He's not trying to avoid contact. He is trying to mow people down. And that's the kind of guy that is so easy to root for. So he makes an absolute statement tonight in preseason game number 1 for the Kansas City Chiefs, just running over Jacksonville Jaguars. But I do want to talk about the other running backs real quick before we move on to the linebacker conversation, because I do think that's an important one to have. So all training camp, it's been Deneric Prince. Like, we know Isaiah Pacheco, clear number 1. Isaiah Pacheco had a couple of nice plays tonight too on the opening series of the game, but we knew he wasn't going to get a lot of action tonight. He is a clear-cut RB1 for the Kansas City Chiefs without question heading into the season. But the RB2 job is still totally up for grabs. And now, Clyde Edwards-Helaire has talked a little bit about some of his mental health and some of the things that he's going through. And he's missed some practice recently, but he's been back on the field this week. And then Deneric Prince, though, has been kind of the surprise. A guy that was getting glowing reviews in training camp last season, but then can't make the 53-man roster, spends the entire year on the Chiefs practice squad last season. But then coming into camp this season, he's effectively in St. Joseph, Missouri, the Chiefs running back too, and getting all of those reps. And it looks like, okay, he's carved out this role for himself. Like the Chiefs are making a statement here. And then tonight, as soon as Isaiah Pacheco leaves the game, it's Clyde in. Clyde's the immediate running back too for the Kansas City Chiefs. And Clyde was in as soon as the starters left the game. So I don't want to read too much into that. Maybe it's just a veteran nod thing, which is something that is also very prominent in the preseason, particularly like veterans get those nods as like a nod of respect early on. And then over the next couple of games, we'll probably see a little bit more of rotation and maybe we'll get some Deneric Prince looks. But for all of the reports coming out of training camp that like, oh, Deneric Prince is the clear running back 2 for the Kansas City Chiefs, like there was enough tonight to maybe question that a little bit, especially when you look at what Carson Steele did with his opportunities.
Oh, 100%. And here's the thing too. With your running back too, you're not looking for a bell cow. Andy Reid wants a guy that when he spells Isaiah Pacheco isn't going to put the ball on the ground and can pass block and can do a little bit in the receiving game. Like trust is more important than ability, I feel like, with running back 2 and Andy Reid. Andy Reid wants to know that you're not going to cost the game when you have the ball in your hands. And I'm not saying Deneric Prince is the guy that's going to do that, but I'm saying that Clyde Edwards-Helaire has carried the ball in the postseason for Andy Reid and kept the ball safe in one football game. So he's won football games in the postseason with Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Andy Reid trusts him. It is that veteran nod, but it's also that veteran trust. And then also, it's just the fact that when you have that, even though he shouldn't have been a first-round draft pick, it doesn't matter. When you have former first-round draft pick tagged next to your name, you have a longer leash than any other player, the other players on the team, right? Like you get more opportunities in the NFL when you're a former first-round draft pick. And I think that there's an aspect of, especially tonight with Clyde's performance, where he's still working his way back. He's not 100%. And let's not act like your mental affects your physical as much as your physical affects your mental. Like when you get hurt, it's a mental battle. When your mind is in pain, it's a physical battle as well. You carry that pain with you physically. And he's been 100% open and honest that he's suffering from PTSD from when he was robbed at gunpoint in 2018. And he's been seeing Dr. T with the team for that and working through it. And I applaud him for being open and honest and truthful with people and being brave enough to share that. And I'm not going to hold that against him, but at the same time, like in the same way that if he was coming back from a knee injury, we're like, he's not 100% yet. He's probably like 80%. He's coming back from an injury. He's still healing from an injury. He's not, we can't expect him to be 100% out there on the football field yet, because he's still working his way back from injury. And I think that Andy Reid's getting him on the field and he's giving them those reps. And I do think that in Andy Reid's mind, even though Prince is getting a lot of the reps in camp because Clyde hasn't been available, in Andy Reid's mind, Clyde's still running back number 2.
Yeah. And, we could see that change, but I do think there's that there's something to buy into there, that Clyde got the nod tonight over to Deneric Prince, despite what we've seen so far in training camp out of the backfield. So nothing major like that. That position could still be totally up for grabs for the Kansas City Chiefs, but the running back room is an interesting one outside of Isaiah Pacheco. So it's something to watch. I think, Rocky, the case can be made easily that the most interesting position group for the Kansas City Chiefs, and the one that I think I'm the most concerned about, is the linebacker room right now, and just their lack of depth there. And I think that's a cause for concern. And it's something that we've talked about a lot here on Foolish Club for the Chiefs, because I think the Chiefs had one of the most underrated linebacker rooms in the league last season, with Willie Gay, with Drew Tranquil, with Nick Bolton, with Leo Chanel, and like the depth that they had there, and like the way that those guys were so interchangeable. And I know Bolton got hurt and Tranquil came in and was just absolutely lights out for the Chiefs, and that's why they brought him back. But there is a little bit of cause for concern with, I think, a lack of athleticism in that room this year. And we talked about it a couple of weeks ago on Show and BK, where you love everything that Tranquil can do. And I think Tranquil is a fine player who is so versatile and can play any linebacker position for you and be great at it. And then Nick Bolton, who is banged up right now, is inactive tonight and is in a contract year. So you want to see Nick Bolton have a monster year, because he is a key member of the Chiefs defense and a guy that I do think they legitimately want to re-sign. But I don't think it's going to happen this season. Probably it may go into the offseason and they try to work something out with him, but we'll see how that goes. He's got to get healthy and get on the field. But prior to his injury last season, I think Nick Bolton was playing the best football of his career. And then when he came back from his injury, he just didn't look like the same player. Like he was clearly not healthy the rest of the way, but he did play a little bit better down the stretch for the Chiefs. But Willie Gay was such an underrated part of this defense for so many years. I think because he never became that full 95% of the snaps kind of player for the Chiefs and the way that Chiefs fans wanted him to be. But he was still a key member of the defense and still an extremely versatile member of the defense because he brought so much athleticism to the table that I think they were lacking at other members of their linebacker group. And I like Leo a lot, and I think that there's still room for improvement with Leo and places for him to take his game to another level. But Rocky, Leo Chenal struggles very much in coverage. That is not his game. He belongs around the line of scrimmage, stuffing the run and going and laying hits. Like that is what he does. That is his bag. That is what he excels at. And I think that's where he can excel in this Chiefs defense. But without Nick Bolton in the mix, Drew Tranquill just can't cover the entire field all on his own. And he got burned by Travis Etienne for a touchdown tonight. Like, I just think that I'm starting to get really concerned with this Chiefs linebacker room because I feel like they just don't have the depth that they have last season. They don't have the overall athleticism that I felt like and versatility that they had last season. And it just feels like it could be a legitimate cause for concern, especially if Nick Bolton winds up being on the shelf for a while.
Oh, 100%. It's a cause for concern. This takes you back to the days of like when you had Frank Zombo out there starting for the Chiefs at linebacker, where yeah, where you're like, this guy may know where to be and when to be there, but he is not an NFL level athlete. He just can't get to the points fast enough. And that's kind of how you feel a little bit about Cole Christensen, and Jack Cochran when they're out there on the field. And it's crazy what a difference one Willie Gay Jr. makes to a roster and the depth of a position, just having that one extra athlete that can go sideline to sideline. Because you're absolutely right with Leo Chenal. Leo Chenal is an A plus athlete. He is not an A plus agility cover player, right? Like Drew Tranquill is. He is an attack downfield, north south pass rush, fill a hole, attack a hole, read the play, attack the play, read the play, attack the play. Not a read the player, react to the player in coverage on the open field, and then try to track a guy down and make a play on the ball. Like, it's just not his skill set at all. He is like honestly, his ideal role would be like old school 3-4 outside linebacker rushing the quarterback, which the Chiefs have played around with in training camp, using him in that role, because I think that is where he excels. I think that because of this, I think in the regular season, you're going to see a lot more big nickel packages out of the Chiefs where they bring a guy like Jaden Hicks closer to the line. You're going to see like Justin Reed playing closer to the line. You're going to be seeing a lot of Chamari Connor down closer to the line, and you're going to see them kind of trying to do like a hybrid, like linebacker safety sort of thing. And just, I think you're going to see a lot of Drew Tranquill and Nick Bolton and a third safety almost as like a base package because of the lack of athleticism and depth in this linebacker group.
Yeah. And I didn't take that much away from the secondary tonight. I think it's kind of hard to do that in a game like this. Next week we should see more from the starters. We should see more looks from the Chiefs of like what we could typically expect a little bit more of in the regular season. Like, they're obviously not going to do a ton of stuff in the preseason, but next week is the game we should all really be locked into to get a better idea of how these things are going to play out once we get into the regular season. So I didn't have that much from the secondary, but I do think there's cause for concern with this linebacker group, because if you can't rely on those guys to drop back into coverage over the middle of the field, like, it's going to be an issue. And the Chiefs are banged up in the safety room right now too. We don't know when Justin Reed's going to come back. Like, there hasn't been a lot of positive updates on Justin Reed and his availability going into the regular season. And he was a really important member for that Chiefs secondary last year. And, we know how incredible Trent McDuffie is. My expectations are through the roof for Chamari Connor in year number 2, but like, they need Justin Reed back there manning that safety position, because I like Brian Cook too, but Justin Reed was a really underrated part of that secondary last season. And Jaden Hicks had a couple of nice moments tonight, but he's still a rookie who's going to make mistakes and have some growing pains to go through. But the linebacker room just feels like it's the thinnest room on the roster right now. So I know the Chiefs still have a little bit of money. I would like to see them maybe go look at the veteran scrap heap of linebacker and see if you can just bring somebody else in that makes you feel a little bit better. I think Jack Cochran had a sack tonight. So like, yeah, you love to see Jack Cochran out there making plays, but I don't think any of us want to see Jack Cochran playing a significant role on defense this year for the Kansas City Chiefs. So I would just feel a little bit better if they made just a minor move in the linebacker room heading into the season. But Rocky, before we get out of here, again, Kansas City Chiefs fall 26-13, preseason game number 1. And some interesting notes, but I mentioned this on Cho and BK on Friday, and everybody made fun of me. But all reports out of training camp, especially from our guy at Arrowhead Pride, Pete Sweeney, Justin Ross is having the best training camp he has had as a Kansas City Chief. And Justin Ross is setting all of us up to have our hearts broken once again, because he had a very nice catch tonight. I think it was early in the second quarter. He had a nice sideline grab. He went up and got it, got 2 feet in. But like, again, I think what has been the major issue with Justin Ross so far in his NFL career is that he just doesn't have the same kind of explosiveness that he had pre-significant back injuries, and he doesn't create separation, but he's always been good at going up and getting the football. So it's like easy to get really excited about that, especially when the reports are glowing in training camp. But I feel like he's going to give us another 1 or 2 of these throughout the preseason, and we're going to convince ourselves like Justin Ross is on this roster. He's a lock. He's going to find a way to contribute somehow this year for the Kansas City Chiefs. And then when they cut down to 53, they're going to cut Justin Ross or something. We're all just going to be like, okay, well, we wasted all of our time doing all of that again.
100% setting us up for the fall. And I'm ready to get my heart broken again. I am. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, he's really good at catching 50-50 balls, but when every ball is a 50-50 ball because you get no separation, it's like, well, are you only catching 65% of your passes then? And that's not a good number on the whole. And so, yeah, every play that he makes is a highlight reel play. And every play that he doesn't make, he just looks like he's covered and he didn't catch the ball. Right. And so can he make enough of those highlight reel plays to be a productive player in the NFL? Or is he just going to be like 10 highlight plays a year and we love him because he makes those highlight plays, but he's not actually a functionally like playable player on a down by down basis in the NFL because he can't get that separation. And so I'm excited to fall in love with him all over again and then get my heart broken and then be like, oh yeah, it was the right move to cut him because he didn't have the separation that he needs to have in the NFL. But then the problem is, Steve, that you got a guy who gets open all the time like Nico Remigio, but then were the lights too bright for him tonight?
Yeah.
He made some great plays, but then it was up and down, man. And so it's like, you want a guy like Remigio to make the team, and he shows out. He's another guy that you want to fall in love with, but then he put the ball on the ground a couple of times.
It's Remigio, Rocky, because he has been very vocal about like
it is Remigio. Because he's Filipino, and that's the correct pronunciation. So I apologize. I lived in the Philippines for 3 years, so I should be. If anybody should get it right, it's probably me. But so yeah, it's Remigio.
And it's like Marquez Valdez-Scantling. Like he went out of his way to make sure that is how he wants it pronounced. That is how you say his name. So give Nico that respect. It's Remigio, Rocky. But
apologies, Nico. It is Remigio.
But
sorry. Pasentia Pa. That's Tagalog for you right there. I'm sorry.
But I totally agree with you. He is Nico Remigio has been the last 2 years, and obviously he suffered a season-ending injury last year. So, but he was like kind of like a little hype machine last year, early on in training camp. And then this year, it's all been, oh, he's their starting kick returner. He's going to have a role in the offense. Like the Chiefs love him, and he's like this versatile player. And it was up and down tonight, but I'm willing to take a step back and take a breather and say, like, they have faith in him as a player. I think getting into live game action after missing all of last year, and you're a player who's trying to leave your mark in your first preseason action and prove that like all the reps you're getting in training camp matter, and the Chiefs aren't like wasting their time giving you all these opportunities. Like, maybe a little bit of it was just nerves. Like the catch where it really should have been a fumble recovery for a touchdown, but it was overturned on review, which I think was a bad call. But he jumps up to go get the ball, which was totally unnecessary because there was nobody around him. And if he just catches the ball on his feet and takes off, he probably could have picked up another 20, 25 yards. Like if he doesn't make that jump and fall down and then try to get up and get stripped and like you're just doing too much, then he nearly muffed a kick. And like, it was just up and down, but I'm willing to say, hey, first live action for a young player who's trying to carve out a role for himself and get opportunities. Like maybe he just had a little bit of nerves. Like I'm not too worried about Nico. I'm still expecting to see big things from him. But one thing that I am a little bit worried about, Rocky, and I think it's something we're going to see across the league. Like this is definitely going to pop up again, and there's definitely going to be some issues, is this new NFL kickoff rule that it seems like, NFL teams who are supposed to know these rules inside and out, and you spend time working on it and practicing all of these things, there's going to be a bunch of headaches with this thing, man, as we move forward here into the regular season. Hopefully they get some of this stuff figured out in the preseason, and the teams that are really good at it really figure out how to make everything work. But Mecole Hardman winds up getting a safety tonight because the ball lands in the end zone, but it pops out of the end zone. Then he takes a knee in the end zone and grabs the football from the 1 yard line. And apparently when you do that, that's a safety now. And it's like, it's just really complicated, but I do believe that this kickoff rule is going to be good for football at some point. The Chiefs just definitely still have some work to do. And they also gave up a big kickoff return to Parker Washington. Like overall special teams, not a great night for the Kansas City Chiefs overall. So Dave Tubbs got some work to do when they get back to the practice field in St. Joe.
Oh, definitely some work to do. And let's get one thing straight. That's always been a safety. It's not a safety now. That's always been a safety, what Mecole Hardman did. If the ball goes to the end zone, it goes back to the field of play, and you pull it back in the end zone and kneel it. That's been a safety, since, I don't know, Orville Redenbacher was in diapers. You know what I mean? And so so that was an inexcusable, just like brain lapse for Mecole Hardman, where he thought he was doing something smart, and It was the opposite of doing something smart. But yeah, it wasn't a good look for Dave Tobe's unit when he has spoken a lot this offseason about watching every single XFL kickoff and studying it and coming up with ideas. And then he's going to have Justin Reed do kickoffs. He had Luis Rees-Zama do some kickoffs today because the kicker's involved in 40% of the tackles, he said, right? And so then the very first one of the game, it almost gets taken back to the house because his guys, just got blown up and there was no convergence on the ball whatsoever. And tackling was horrible. Everybody took terrible lines to the ball. And it is a brand new thing. And there is a learning curve that's going to come along with it. But it seemed like the other team was more prepared for that learning curve today than the Chiefs were, which is concerning. Especially because living here in Tampa, I had the Jaguars like broadcast. That's the only one that was available to me. So I had to watch, unfortunately, I had to watch the god-awful Jacksonville Jaguars broadcast today, where they said just really great insight. Like he tackled that guy, or, oh, look, the kick returner dropped the ball. Like they had no idea any of the names of the Chiefs players. And it was aggravating, but they said on the broadcast that the Jacksonville Jaguars have only practiced the new kickoff rules 1 day in camp this year. 1 day. They practiced it for 1 day, and they were more prepared than the Chiefs were. That's concerning. That they came out and played better according to the new rules than the Kansas City Chiefs were. When special teams is supposed to be the Chiefs' bread and butter, right? Like Dave Tobe is the assistant head coach of the team. He's supposed to be one of the best, special teams coaches in the NFL, and I'll give him his laurels. Like the man has been very successful in the NFL for a very long time, and I'm not saying the sky's falling or anything like that, but it was a rough look for him today that his unit played very poorly.
Yeah. It was tough. I still got faith in Dave. I know a lot of Chiefs fans just kind of want Andy.
Oh, I do too. Like, listen,
and like move on from Dave, but like I think the Chiefs special teams are fine. They'll get it figured out. It was just a sloppy night from that unit, but nothing that I'm gonna be overly dramatic about here moving forward. But overall, I feel like we learned a lot in preseason game number one, Rocky, as the Chiefs fall 26-13 against the Jacksonville Jaguars. I said we were going to do a quick post-game show, but Rocky, it's just been so long since we've had a chance to talk about Chiefs football. We've been rambling for 45 minutes about this preseason game. So any final thoughts before we get out of here on the Chiefs' first preseason action of the 2024 season?
Well, the fact that it wasn't as short is actually my fault, because me and Kramer say before every Veach season that we're going to keep it to a tight 40 minutes this week. And then it's an hour and a half later.
A solid 90 minutes every episode.
Yeah, every time. And we're just talking about nonsense for 3/4 of it. And so I'll take the blame on this one. I just like talking to my friends too much. And every one of you guys out there are friends, we feel like. And so that's why. But yeah, no, the sky's not falling. The Chiefs still have Patrick Mahomes at quarterback. They still have Andrew Reid as their head coach. Like these games don't matter aside from the ability to evaluate these younger players and say, okay, are these guys going to be actual contributors, or are they just preseason draft, like preseason camp crushes, right? Is this summer love, or is this the real thing? That's all we're trying to figure out in these next 3 games. And I think for Carson Steele, it's the real thing. I'm going to say it. It's not summer love. This is true love, Steven. That's what I'm calling it right now. Nico Remigio, I hope it's the real thing, but I don't know, but I hope so. Nico, please show me your true self. Prove me. Prove me right. Please, I beg you.
Well, we should learn a lot more next Saturday when the Kansas City Chiefs host the Detroit Lions. Preseason game number 2. That's 3 p.m. kickoff at Arrowhead Stadium. That's the game where we're going to see the starters probably play the first half, I would imagine. And Andy typically carries that in the second half sometimes, but I wouldn't be surprised if they only play the first half. But we should see them get some extended run. So we should get a lot more to chew on in preseason game number 2 against the Detroit Lions. And that's a team that's a legitimate Super Bowl contender. So that should actually be a fun preseason game to watch, depending on who suits up for the Detroit Lions in that one. So make sure you stay locked in here to Foolish Club Media. Make sure you subscribe, rate, and review everything that we're doing on Apple and Spotify. Please head over to our YouTube page. We're going live every Monday through Friday right now. The Daily Fix with Ron Hughley, 12 p.m., 3 quick topics. We're talking all things Chiefs, keeping you up to date on Chiefs training camp and everything you need to know about the back-to-back Super Bowl champions. He's Rocky Magaña. You can follow him on Twitter at Rocky Magaña. I'm Steven Serda, where you can find me. We'll be back later this week with all of your favorite podcasts, Veach Season, Show and BK, The Great British Chiefs Show, and me and Rocky will be back next Saturday to talk about the Chiefs and Lions. We'll talk to you then.